can make a recording of this for people who've not been able to join us today. So thank you to those who've just joined. Please put yourself on mute and feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. That'd be great. And so really, yeah, the purpose of the webinar is to show you how you're creating change through your volunteering, so that you can feel part of the team, the volunteer team, and indeed the shared interest team. So we're going to be looking a little bit about how what you do in your different roles contributes to what we're aiming to achieve as an organisation. And to help us do that, we're putting that change into the context of what we as an organisation have, which is our theory of change. So this is really how, what impact do we as an organisation want to have in all that we do as an organisation? What is the purpose of what we're trying to do? And the goal, if you like, of our theory of change is to have improvement in the livelihood of people as they trade their way out of poverty. So that's what we're aiming for as an organisation. Now, the theory of change is really our steps. How do we get there? That's quite a big change to want to see, and it's quite a big change for any individual or indeed an organisation to achieve. But we can break that down into steps, into small steps that help us get there. You can read more about our theory of change in our social accounts, and indeed it's very pertinent at the moment for us because our social accounts are just being finalised for this year. And so they will be available hopefully in the new calendar year. So usually they come out in January time. They're being produced at the moment. They're then externally audited and then publicly available in the new year. But we'll keep you informed of when that document becomes available. But many of you will know it's a great resource to keep an eye out for. So this is the main change that we're hoping to achieve as an organisation. And what we're going to do now is just have a look at some of the activities that you've been involved with in the last 12 months. So we're starting off with data entry. So looking at the activity of those of you who have supported us with data entry. First off, for this role, we had some support with our member survey. So that was back in April, May time of this year. And there were over 1,200 responses entered online with the support of some of you indeed here on this call. Now, what did that help us achieve? What difference does that make? So that means that we are able to hear and acknowledge the views of our members, including in things like our strategic review, which is another piece of work that we're currently undertaking at Shared Interest at the moment. So this is about really enabling us to have engaged members, potentially have higher member retention. If we're engaging with members and members are feeling that they are having the opportunity to engage, to communicate with us, to give feedback, share ideas, share perspectives on things, then that helps with member retention, and potentially also an increase in capital available to lend, being that it's from our members that we raise that share capital. So those are all smaller steps that help us achieve that bigger change. And something else, another data entry activity that some of you helped with this year for Shared Interest Foundation was in terms of support with the baseline case studies. So these are studies that are performed at the start of a project to enable the foundation to understand what change has happened when we get to the end of that project. If you don't have that understanding of where things were when we started, it's very difficult to measure what change has occurred. So 246 responses have been entered by some of you again through baseline study data entry for the foundation. What does that mean? So as I mentioned, it means that we have a knowledge of the information at the start of new projects. That means ultimately we can understand if there has been an increase in entrepreneurial and business skills. And it's that step that then helps us achieve that bigger change. So then looking a little bit at some of the feedback from you. So what does it mean about the impact that you're having on this as well? So a couple of references there from some of you who were involved in that data entry for us. So leaving data entry, moving to our translators and translation activities that have happened over the last 12 months. So a couple of examples here. We perform surveys at various points throughout the year. And as a number of our customers and organizations that we engage with have different language needs to English, so their first language or their language of communication isn't necessarily English. So we have French and Spanish translators, and some of you indeed here with us this morning. And we had 4 of these beneficiary and producer surveys translated this year into French and Spanish. Now that obviously means that we're in a better position to be able to accurately gather feedback from our beneficiaries and producers by having that commonality of language. So we're not assuming that people are able to respond in English, we are translating into their preferred language. That then, in terms of small steps towards the change, is around customer communications, strong customer relationships, and also partnership communications. So really how we engage and communicate with key stakeholders, and translations obviously being a key part of enabling us to do that accurately and effectively. In addition to surveys, some of our translators have also helped with interview translations. So there's been a bit more detail in these than through surveys. So a different type of information. This is really more about understanding that change from their perspective. So from producers, from beneficiaries, understanding their individual experiences of change in livelihood. And through having the capacity to translate those interviews, it means that we can translate those back out of the languages that they've been carried out in, whether that was Spanish, French, so that we can then communicate that in English. It also helps, again, customer relationships, customer communications, and engaged members and volunteers, because it then means that we can communicate those stories to members, volunteers, to be able to share that message and give that feedback to you. We know that many of you appreciate knowing the impact that shared interest is having on customers, on producers. So that's a really important step for us to be able to share those stories with you as well. And then just a nice bit there from someone who carried out that activity. And then moving on from translations, events and engagement. Obviously this year things have looked a little bit different, as we know, and as we're probably all well tuned of and tired of hearing. But we're looking forward to next year, where things will hopefully have a little bit more more stability around what's possible and what we can look at doing. So events and engagement activities that have happened this past 12 months. We have, or you have rather, run 27 stalls or talks. Those have been a combination of face-to-face and online. We are starting to see a small number of face-to-face activities happening again, which is great. And obviously we continue just to engage with you all individually about how, when that happens, depending on where you are and your own experiences and your own comfort levels around doing anything. So what does that mean? What does that lead to? That obviously introduces us to new audiences, but also enables us to share updates with existing supporters as well. So both of those things are really important. It's not just about introducing us to new people, it's also about, some of you have fed back that you've met existing members at events, or people have come up to the stall and saying, oh, I'm already a supporter. It's nice for them to see that shared interest is there, and perhaps ask questions if they might have them as well, about what's happening, about what's any updates that they can learn from you. And then again, those small steps towards that bigger change. So this leads to increased membership, engaged members and volunteers, and ultimately, hopefully, increase in capital available to lend as well. Another type of engagement that we've had a small amount of in the last year is newsletter articles. So these are the sorts of things that sometimes some of you get in contact with us about, saying you've got an opportunity to put something in a local newsletter, local online platform, whatever it might be. They're all very important and very good ways of helping us get the message out there to people, helps raise our profile with new audiences. And then the small steps that that's leading to is around promotional activities, increased awareness, leading to hopefully increased membership and increase in capital that we can then lend. So again, those smaller changes that lead to the bigger change, as we mentioned at the start, of improvement in livelihoods for people. So hopefully giving you a bit of a sort of a step-by-step process, because it can sometimes be difficult to think, well, how is this one action or this task that I'm carrying out, how does that fit into the bigger picture? How is that enabling us as an organisation to achieve that change that we're hoping to achieve? Just as I come to leave you with a couple of experiences from those of you who carry out sort of events activity for us. And there you'll see at the bottom what has happened over the last 12 months in terms of, we've mentioned that some of those activities hopefully lead to new accounts, increased membership and increased investment available to lend. In the 12 months that we're looking at, we've had just under 500 new accounts opened and 4.6 million of net increase in share capital, which is absolutely phenomenal and has been the biggest increase in share capital that actually we've ever seen, which is absolutely fantastic. And thank you to everyone who's played a part in that. It's very much a collective effort. It's not something that is down to any individuals or any kind of saying we couldn't do it without the support of everybody involved. So that's a fantastic, fantastic thing to have done in the last 12 months. I just wanted to mention on the note of share capital, and this is particularly relevant to those of you, as I say, carrying out roles involved in events and sort of bringing us to new audiences, is that we do hope to be in a position in the future to be able to give some more detailed feedback around the share capital raised as a result of different activities. That will never be at the individual level for reasons of GDPR. We're not ever in a position to be able to give individuals information about direct investments. But we have in the past been able to report that on a regional level, and we hope in the future that we'll be able to do that in the near future. It's something we're working on, understanding how the data is gathered and how we can then report that data accurately, so that we can give that impact back, share that impact back with you all as well. So then a little bit about the volunteer engagement. Obviously, a key part of us being able to make change is engaging with you all and how we do that, hopefully successfully, and different things, new things that we're working on to do that, such as this webinar, for example, to demonstrate your impact. One of the key things is sending birthday cards. So we send staff colleagues birthday cards, and we feel it's an important and a nice thing to do to extend that to you. It's a nice occasion to mark. Obviously, we've been sending those by email at the moment. We certainly did in the past send them by post, and obviously we'll see how things work out. But sometimes it's quite nice to get something in your inbox on your birthday as well as through the post. In addition, this year we held our first volunteer festival online. We did have a face-to-face event in 2019, so we would have been due, carrying this out every 2 years, we would have been due to have had a face-to-face event this year, but obviously things being as they were, online still felt the most appropriate forum for that. And indeed, for those of you who attended, it was certainly a fantastic event, and we had some really great input from colleagues across shared interests. We also had some external input from people outside the organisation as well. Most of the sessions from the Volunteer Festival are still available on the resource library, so do check those out if you haven't had a chance to. We are planning to hold another Volunteer Festival online next year. That'll be at the beginning of June. So if you do have any suggestions of sessions that you would like to hear about in that festival, if you'd like to deliver a session, if you think of something that you think actually other volunteers might be quite interested in this, let us know. It'd be great to have some volunteer input to that as well. So this is something that you think you know a bit about, or that you just think other people might benefit from hearing about, let us know. That would be great to have some of your input to that as well. So a little shout out to Ruth and Mike, who very kindly hosted a couple of training sessions for you earlier in the year. And those sessions were in February, and about this wonderful new technology that we all know so well now, Zoom. So thank you very much to Mike and Ruth for sharing their skills, their knowledge with us all. I know that many of you who attended that really appreciated the support and the guidance that they were able to share to help you, not necessarily in your roles with shared interest, but it's a technology that I think people are using in all sorts of different ways. So it's always nice to be able to learn a little bit more from peers on that. We have also, not too long ago, completed our workshop series that we ran earlier in the autumn, covering online communications, presentation content, and generating opportunities. And those workshops were predominantly attended by ambassadors and community supporters. They were sort of predominantly aimed at those of you in those roles. And they did give us a really great opportunity for conversation, an opportunity for many of you to reflect and try out some of the ideas on those different themes. So we set little takeaway tasks for people to carry out following those workshops. And I've had some really positive and encouraging feedback from those of you who attended those and carried out those takeaway tasks. And those workshops and the ideas that came out of that are something that we are keen to build on, and we'll be looking at that in the new year, to hold opportunities for those of you in those roles to come together to talk more about events and activities, share ideas, share experiences with each other, to hopefully inspire each other to have some new ideas about different things, as I say, depending on circumstances where you are and what, again, you feeling comfortable getting back into as things hopefully begin to open up again a little bit further. So as part of the booking for this session, we did ask you to give us a little bit of feedback about what matters to you about the impact you're having in your role. Again, so please bear in mind that there are a number of different volunteer roles being represented today, and indeed through this feedback, and indeed all the time. When we talk about volunteering, we're not just talking about volunteers carrying out the role that you carry out. We have a diverse input and diverse support of volunteers carrying out all sorts of different roles. So some of the feedback we got from some of you, knowing what other volunteer events are good to do. So as I mentioned, we're looking in the new year to be able to give those of you in those roles the opportunity to share more experiences with each other, have those sort of informal conversations about what you've done, what you felt from that, what you might be able to share experiences with each other on, give support to each other, really. Letting others know about the global impact of fair trade. So this is, again, obviously putting the context of shared interest in the fair trade movement more widely. And this is something that we try and do through things like the newsletter, the volunteer newsletter. We try and include references to the wider fair trade movement. Some of the reading suggestions that we make, or the kind of blog suggestions, have come from that wider fair trade world. We are, as I said, looking at building our plans for the Volunteer Festival next year. So if there is anybody from the wider fair trade movement who you think you would like to hear from, or anything about fair trade that you would like to hear more about, let us know, and we can always see if we can try and find someone who might be able to talk about that at the Volunteer Festival next year. Being aware of opportunities for volunteering, well, you'll all hopefully be aware that we have just recently, at the end of last week, sent out some tasks that we were looking for support with as part of our strategic review process. So we always try and communicate with you about different opportunities that are coming through. We know that they might not all be of interest to you. That's absolutely fine. We want you to feel engaged and fulfilled in the volunteering you do carry out. We're always just trying to make people aware of what opportunities there are to carry out volunteering. Whether or not you feel that that's an opportunity you want to pick up is entirely up to you. Keeping informed about projects. So we do always endeavour to share feedback with people, whether that's through kind of final reports that data entry has been used for, anything that's produced using translations people have done. But if there's anything that you feel you haven't been told about or haven't been kept up to date about, get in touch with us. Ask if you don't get the information. We do, as I say, aim to share copies of publications, reports, those sorts of things. But do get in touch if you have missed that, or you're not sure when that something might be being shared that you would have been expecting. And then finally, how it improves lives. So really, that's kind of the sort of the step-by-step change. How do we get from doing this activity to improving lives and changing lives? And that's really what we've discussed earlier in terms of how those different tasks feed into other impacts that they have that lead to that bigger change. So things like increased ability to communicate with our audiences, giving us a greater understanding of how we are improving lives, or increased share capital, increased investment, helping us to improve more lives. And obviously communicating that through things like case studies of organisations that we're lending to, that we're working with, so that you can understand what has the difference been to these individuals, to these organisations, and what's happening to them and their livelihoods. So a couple of dates for your diaries to kind of keep up to speed with what's coming up in the next year. I'm sure many of you are aware at the moment that COP26 is taking place. There's a variety of online activities going on there that you can join up with through all sorts of networks and audiences. Obviously, it's not something specific to shared interest, but it's obviously looking at the bigger picture in terms of what the work shared interest is trying to achieve. And the global scale. And some of you may have signed up for the Shared Interest Foundation session that's being held tomorrow at 10 o'clock, which is being led by our foundation colleagues to talk a bit about the impact and the work of some of the projects they're working on around climate change, or around climate change mitigation, adaptation for climate change. So we look forward to seeing some of you there, I'm sure. Then looking into next year and some slightly more shared interest relevant headlines, I mentioned that we are currently performing a strategic review at the moment, and we have communicated to you that there will be workshop opportunities for you taking place in January. As and when we have more information about those, obviously we will share that. So do please express interest in those if you are interested, and we'll be able to send you details when we have them. I've mentioned our social accounts that are usually published in the new year, along with our annual review. So those documents are being prepared at the moment. Then once they've been audited, they're then published, available to the public. So keep an eye out for that, although again, we will communicate when those become available. For those of you not yet have it in their diaries, Fairtrade Fortnight next year, 21st of February to the 6th of March. We haven't heard anything more from the Fairtrade Foundation at this point about plans for that yet. It usually sort of happens more towards the end of the year, if not early in the following year, that's sort of communicated. But we'll obviously see what the focus is, whether that's online, face-to-face, a combination of opportunities there potentially. Our own AGM, the 11th of March. Next year, again, more information will be coming out about that in the new year, but just the date there for you for the time being. World Fair Trade Day, the 14th of May, and then Volunteers Week, which will be when we will aim to hold our Volunteer Festival, is the first week in June. So the Volunteer Festival was 2 days this year, and we'll look at seeing what sort of sessions we can offer, whether we run it over 2 days again, or it may be that we run it over the full week, or longer, depending on what opportunities there might be. And that's almost sort of like a bit of a pick and mix. Obviously, you can join as many or as few of the sessions as you want to through that activity. Just a few suggestions for things that you might be looking to do, thinking, oh well, this is good to see what change we can do. What can I do now, or this week, or next week, or whenever you have a spare moment. A couple of suggestions. You can, for those of you who are on social media, follow, share content from us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or LinkedIn, depending on which of those platforms you use. You might also like to consider following us regularly, or kind of logging into those things as you do, seeing what we're doing. Mention that you are what you're doing as a volunteer with shared interest if you want to. We can provide you with help on content for social media if you want that. If you want to write tweets or posts or things that reference shared interest, we can help you with doing that if you would like. But feel free to do that yourselves. Also, I mentioned earlier that one of the ways we try and kind of give you a greater understanding perhaps, or offer you the opportunity to learn more about what's happening in the fair trade movement beyond shared interest is through the feature in our volunteer newsletter, what we've been reading, watching and listening to. So these are just suggestions that we've come across, that we've observed, we've noticed. But if you come across anything that you think, oh, maybe other volunteers would be interested in this, let us know. It's great to have your feedback and your suggestions. And I'm sure whatever has interested you will probably be of interest to someone else as well. So do send those through to us, and we can look at adding those into that sort of suggested reading suggestions, or if it's a blog or a film you've seen, could be something on Netflix, could be a book you picked up, whatever is inspired or been thought-provoking to you, let us know. And then a couple of more, if you have a little bit longer, perhaps, see what you come across perhaps through your online activities, whether you're on social media or things that you come across in the local press. If there are any events or activities taking place that you think, oh, that might be quite interesting, I wonder if shared interest is familiar with that event or that opportunity, let us know. We know that it might not be you involved in going to the event if it's possible to attend, but please let us know, because we possibly haven't come across it, but it's always good to know what's happening and what's going on, that we can then explore those opportunities. And it might well be that then there's an opportunity for someone to go along and have a stall or be involved in the event, or simply to attend the event to learn more about it. So do send us through any event ideas that you've come across. Wherever you are, whatever your role is, it's all helpful in helping us support those volunteers who do attend events and do go out to spread the word. Also, you can catch up on any newsletter content you might have missed out on over the year. Back copies of the volunteer newsletter are available on the resource library. So you can have a read of back copies of those if you might have missed them coming into your inbox, and just let us know if you have difficulty finding them or accessing them. We can certainly find another way of getting those to you if you're interested. And do, of course, keep an eye out for the next volunteer newsletter, which will be coming to you shortly as well. One thing that didn't appear in the calendar there is International Volunteer Day. Now, this is taking place in just under a month, the 5th of December. International Volunteer Day for Economic and Social Development, to give it its full title, is more commonly referred to as International Volunteer Day. And is an international observance mandated by the UN General Assembly in 1985. So it's actually been a day that's been on the calendar for a number of years, and offers the opportunity for organisations that involve volunteers to promote volunteerism and to encourage people to support volunteer efforts, and of course to recognise volunteer contributions, specifically to the achievement of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So we will be marking International Volunteer Day. We will be sharing messages with yourselves, with staff colleagues as well, to talk about what volunteering is, what volunteerism is about, and what you as our volunteers are doing and have been doing to support us as an organisation. So it is an international event, or observance rather. And so it's something that you might see pop up, as I say, if you're on social media, you might see various comments, messages popping up from all sorts of places about that as well, which is great. So thank you all for joining us. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat, see if there's been any questions as we've gone through. But thank you all. And the next webinar will be in March. We'll communicate dates and things of that in due course. But we will also be sharing a feedback form after this for you to let us know a little bit more about your understandings of impact and how this session has gone for you, so that we can use that to tailor towards your needs for the next sessions as well. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Emily. I see that you've popped in there the information about tomorrow's session with the foundation, and indeed some of the strategic review workshops. If anybody wants to get involved in those, drop us an email and we'll keep in touch with those. So lots of interesting fair trade products being enjoyed there from you all. Chocolate, coffee, some wine. Excellent, lovely. Good to see the wine getting a shout out there. Coffee and cocoa powder. Excellent. Cocoa powder is a popular ingredient in my household as well, particularly when it comes to baking. Bananas, another firm favorite there as well. So excellent. That's great. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning for this webinar. I'm going to stop recording now and stop sharing my screen and say thank you.